sessions. The topic of the moment is, of course, AI, and we hear a lot of kind of buzzwords and how great it's going to be. So I've got my colleague Tasif Safar, who's going to take us through what it really means and what you can actually really do now in terms of adding AI to your business applications. And for us, that primarily means Dynamics, but it doesn't have to mean just Dynamics, anything really. So Tasif's going to take us through that now and show us some great demos and explain how we can make it possible. So over to you, Tasif.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. As Chris mentioned, my name is Tasif Zafar. I am the CTO here at HSO, been with the business around 20 odd years. I look after all our technical areas. The last couple of decades, I spent working with organization in different transformation projects, predominantly around business applications, finance, ERP, and other technologies like integration, data, and so on. Today, I'm going to spend the next half an hour or so talking about some of the changes that we are going through in this industry, and this revolution of AI and how it will impact how the new business processes will look like. I will demonstrate some examples as well. We'll talk about some use cases as we go as well. Please feel free to put the questions in the chat. We'd be more than happy to answer towards the end, or even have a one-to-one session if needed. Okay, so I think this is, I always start with sort of what something that we all understand and recognize or been part of. Over the last kind of at least the last 10 years or so, what you see on the screen has been the kind of a default model for any business process, where you have the core applications or a solution which covers the most of the process, like your ERP, your supply chain, your CRM, your finance, and all those systems, and then you, on the top of that, you have kind of an automation layer, and that automation layer is predominantly has been around, for example, workflows or moving data between the multiple applications and so on. But one thing that hasn't changed for a very long time, that everything has been designed to exist or evolve around the humans. Every process starts by a human, finished where a human action or intervention is needed, or it's all kind of a human-centric solutions that we have. However, what we are seeing with the introduction of AI, which is probably one of the biggest change in the last 20 odd years when it comes to the technology, that we are now in this space where we are now moving into this new operating model for businesses, where we have introduced this new layer of agents or AI. Now, it does two things. One is the business logic that previously resided in the business application or was enforced by the users is now moving into that agent layer, or at least partly. Then it also, as a result of that, the agents are then becoming capable of taking decisions that otherwise would have been taken by a human. As a result of, obviously, that the human is now moving into by exception scenario rather than by default. And this could be a simple task, as we're an inquiry about a purchase or a payment came in, or where is my invoice? The vendor sends you an email, and you have to deal with it today manually by logging into a system, finding out who that person is by recognizing the name or the email address or organization, and then looking at that purchase order and then identifying what's the status of that invoice, to responding to that, which is not really a value add task, frankly. And whereas you could be spending that time doing something more productive as a user, because that's where I think we as a human add a lot of value. So before I carry on with the further kind of theory and what is changing, let's start with one of the examples. This is one of the agents that we have built here in HSO, on that scenario that I just highlighted around the vendor payment. Let me just make sure that I have sound enabled. All right, okay. It's only like a minute or so, and then I will carry on with the slides.
Let's start the Payflow agent demo by sending an email to accounts payable to check on the status of a couple invoices. Here's a quick little email to check in on invoice 23400 and 2782. I'll just go ahead and send that, and we'll see how Payflow will respond. While we're waiting for that to happen, let's go into Microsoft Dynamics 365 and take a look at those invoices. It looks like the second invoice, 2782, has a failed match status. We should expect Payflow to come back and tell us this hasn't been paid. Let's search for the first invoice, 23400. You can see it usually takes some time to find this information, even when you know what you're doing. Good news, it looks like this one has been paid and was settled on June 6th. We can also see that it was paid by check with a reference number 792. Now, we still don't know why the earlier invoice wasn't paid. Let's investigate. Look, there's an email buried in my inbox that has relevant information that impacts the status of this payment. In this case, there's a weather event that's delayed the delivery, and that the new expected delivery date is June 12th. Let's pop back over to the top of our inbox, and it looks like Payflow has found what we're looking for and automatically sent a reply. We can see that invoice 23400 was paid, and the status of invoice 2782 includes the latest details impacting the payment and the expected delivery date. Talk to H.
So this is a very simple but a very impactful demo, which sort of highlights what I talked about on that previous slide, where we refer to human by exception and giving the low value repetitive tasks to the agents to deal with. Now, what this highlight in two things. If you one, there is a structured data set, which is in this case was in your finance and operation systems around invoices and purchase order, and one that an unstructured data set, which was in the email. Now, historically, this is where human had played a role, where we were combining those two data sets from structured and unstructured, and coming up with producing more data, which in this case is an email. And how we can then use AI and agents to do these tasks very easily in a very prescriptive way. And of course, in a very personalized way as well. If you look at the email at the end of it, that was very well written, like written by a human, to explaining what has happened and what is likely to happen next. So I think this is kind of a main theme that I'm going to try and build on as we continue this presentation, that we are moving in this space where you are combining number of things: structured, unstructured data, personalization, ability for agents to take an action in a very specific business context. Okay, so when it comes to these AI infused processes, they are different to the current existing processes in three ways. One, you have agents that you see in just an example of, that are always on and listening for signals. So, of course, as a human, we do not have that capacity to be able to take, infinite amount of signals or a very large amount of signals even, whereas the agents are capable to do so. And those signals are all those events that are happening in the business application or happening within your productivity tools like Office 365. Not only that, but they also have the ability to provide you recommendation. And I will show you one of the other demos shortly, where you will see that agents are taking signals from multiple sources and coming back and either taking action on your behalf or providing you a recommendation so you can take an action. Now, the other part of these agents are that they are dynamic. They are able to change and adopt and learn. So this is quite a shift. Workflows are not new. They have been around for a long time, but historically, workflow has been pretty static, and where you will have a kind of a very a binary type structure. If this happened, do this, and then do this, then do that. Instead of where the agents and the AI tooling would be capable of learning from the experiences, what's going on. Let's say if an invoice was rejected by you as a user, why it was rejected, and what action you took to make that decision, and how then agents can learn from it. And this is where some of the new things that was recently announced just last week, the IQ that is built into your Office 365 toolings, Work IQ as it's known, and also the Fabric IQ, which is around your data, that with the memory and the ability to see how you as an individual perform your role as well as your organization and what function they perform and how it can bring together to be able to dynamically take those decisions. And the last part, which is also makes these, this new agentic processes very different, is that an adoptive experience. I call it a glorified to-do list, in a way that it helps you to focus your attention where it needed the most. And again, I will show you an example of that shortly. I think we all recognize this, and this has been around for a very long time and hasn't changed, at least for the last 10 years or so, where you have a bunch of business applications, or whether they are custom or first party, that you have developed over the number of years, that where most of you spend a lot of your time creating sales order, purchase order, paying invoices, hiring, retiring people, and all of that sort of stuff. And they are obviously capturing a lot of data, and there is a bit of a business logic in there as well, which then get normally shipped. All the data that has been collected get shipped into this data layer. I have used Microsoft icons here to represent that, but that could be any combination of Microsoft or non-Microsoft, which will then allow you to be able to get analysis of that data, get insights from that data. But predominantly that has been looking in the back view mirror, what has happened, why it has happened, and being able to see historic data to determine why this has happened. But where are we going now as an industry, that we are looking to take advantage of AI and the data capabilities, the modern data capabilities today, to be able to influence the output. So not looking in only in the back view mirror, but looking front as well, and say, how can we make this happen? And that's where now you have additional consumer of these data that are agents and advanced analytics and large language models. And they have the capability to detect patterns from the data, also put it in a context of a process, that business process that is you are dealing with, to provide you the guidance or even take actions to drive a certain outcome. And we'll go through some of these examples as we continue. But interestingly, what has started to happen is that, so that cycle of where the data move from application into data layer into the insight and intelligence layer, what we are also seeing, those in that intelligence layer, those agents that are consuming that consolidated data, is now being surfaced back into the application where the data started. And the reason for that is because they provide those critical signals to the users to make the right decision. So very simple example, if you are looking to create a purchase order into finance and operations, let's say, and an agent says, look, it looks like you want to buy another 1,000 item of this particular product, but there is already a purchase order for the same product from another vendor. But if you buy it from the same vendor, you will be eligible for the higher quantity discount, therefore reducing your overall cost. Something very basic and simple, right? I'm not a supply chain expert, so excuse my example, but hopefully it gets an idea. Now, what you also see is that by bringing those agents and that insight and that prediction or the information in a specific context back into application enables our users to be more productive and be focusing and making the right decisions. And in order to make that happen, the promise of these agents and AI is that they are capable of understanding the context where a specific action is being taken, so they can provide you information or even advice or recommendations, or even take action on your behalf based on that context. But it also personalized to you as a persona in a business, that what do you do in your organization? And this information is not only coming from the data that is being captured, but it's also coming in, as you just seen in the example, from the data from your email, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, which might be hosting your procurement policy, and so on. And not only that, but they're all designed to drive a certain outcome. They're all, designed to, whether it's the cost reduction or improvement of, and the maintenance of the stock levels or whatever it is, but they're all designed to drive a certain outcome. Now, when it comes to agent, they come in different shape and sizes. You have very basic, simple retrieval agents, and I'm sure some of you have either built one of those or have used them, where you ask a question and you get an answer, and I will show you a couple of examples of that. And then you also have a bit more complex agents that are designed to take a very specific action or complete a very specific task. They are, of course, as the name suggests, that they are going to need two things. They're going to need knowledge, which is your first agent. So they are kind of the next layer on top of that. And then they're also going to need the ability to take an action on your behalf. And as you've seen in the first example, it needed knowledge that came from finance and operations, and it also came from your inbox. And the action there was, or the task there was, to take that, to send that email, to draft that email and send that email. I will show you some of the other examples of these task agents as well in a minute, that what else they could be. Now, but probably the most complex and the most value add agent as well, that of type of agents that you will see, are what we call an autonomous agents. They can operate independently. They are able to do things on your behalf by in a certain within the certain parameters and the guidelines. But they also have the ability to even come to you with a kind of a semi-autonomous way, where to say, look, I have looked at this and I think this is what we should do, and you can accept or reject that particular recommendation. Now, not any organization going to start. I mean, I yet to see an organization that is still straight away aiming to go at the most advanced and the complex level, because for a number of reasons. Probably I would call out two or three that are the biggest things that we come across. Firstly, you do not have the data to support them. They do need very good quality data, not only the good quality data, but also AI ready data. And the difference between the two is very similar to the raw data and the business ready data that you can use for analysis. And additionally, we are also seeing one of the biggest challenge in that space is your process maturity. How mature your processes are. Do you always do a specific task, business task, in one way, or there are actually 50 different variations of it? Some of them are kind of aligned with your business policy and business kind of guidelines. Others might not be. Creating a purchase order, it always surprised me when you go to the organization and you start looking at the process maturity, and there is this perception of that this is how we do it. But when you start looking at it, and you start looking at the different sources of that action being taken, you are surprised that actually there are a lot of different variations here. And some of them are not even known by the higher management or by the business widely. So those two things kind of play a key role when it comes to creating any of these agents. Okay, let's jump into a couple of examples. Let me just set things up. So this is, I'm going to show you to start with one of the retrieval agent. And that retrieval agent is basically been given a lot of financial data from an organization. Let's just call it your finance and operations, data for the particularly, let's say, all your expense data and financial information from there. And it provides you the ability to be able to just simply talk to your data, right? So in this example, I have just literally run it like 20 minutes ago. So just to make sure that I can spend time talking through it instead of typing. So what you can see here, when it comes to data, there are kind of a top 2 or 3 actions that anybody would take. First is to show me this, tell me this and that sort of, so looking for information. The second thing that you are likely to do with the data is to do what we call what if scenario, right? To say what would happen if this happens. Now this is, if you remember what I talked about earlier, this is about driving an outcome that you're looking to drive, and how are you going to get to that. So that what if scenario, and I will show you an example of that. And the last one is probably what we call an anomaly detection. And there are kind of 3 main scenarios that I see when it comes to these retrieval type agents. So the first one you see here is that I just ask a question. I given it a data from 1st of Jan to I think end of October or something like that. And then I said, right, okay, what are the top 3 cost centers with the highest increase in expense compared to last quarter, right? So this is where the value of AI comes in. It's a bit like you're giving this query to an internee or your secretary to go and find that information. You don't need to tell them that what does a quarter mean. You don't need to tell them which quarter we are in. You don't need to tell them what was the last quarter and the start dates for them. Large language model have this capability to turn that out themselves and then actually create a query to go and find that information. And in this case, he came back and said, these are the three departments that have, where the cost has increased significantly. You can carry on discussion. Like in this case, I said, okay, provide me a bit more breakdown, and it started to go in each category and giving me more details. You could ask them from here to ask this to create an action for someone to go analyze this and come back and report to you. That would be more going from retrieval into task scenario, by simply asking to create an email, or actually you could even add another colleague here in the chat to say, right, and then you start having a three-way conversation, two human, third one being the agent. And now you are having this conversation, and between two of you, you are asking for more information, and agent is providing you that information. That brings that new modern ways of working, where the information is being made available, where the decisions are being made. And probably the last one that I like to highlight, the second example here is that, right, okay, what we know today, and what is the the cost of the cloud hosting increased by 20%, what would be the total cost next year? And for its ability to understand that category, now this cloud hosting cost category, if I show you the data in the background, doesn't really have as labeled as cloud hosting. It's got all sorts of different categories, but using large language model has the capability to say, okay, if it's a Microsoft subscription bill, or it's a excuse me, an AWS bill, that's classed as a cloud hosting bill, and is able to do that for you. And very simple scenario, came back and give you that information. Last one is quite an interesting one. We ourselves come across this a lot, where you have a policy. We do a lot of traveling. There is a policy that are specific to us as HSO. There are policies associated with contracts, and then you have the actual transactions that are logged into your in your expense system, your time logging system, and how you can bring the two together to see which are the transactions that are right, that are not aligned with those rules and so on. And here also it's combining structured and unstructured data. In our case, our contracts are Word documents or PDF files, whereas the transaction itself are the structured data. And its ability to combine the two to say, hey, look, this is not in line with this. You spend 1,200 on a flight, whereas the maximum allowance is 750. So you could see that how you can bring that type of capability in with a very little effort, from these agents, to be able to take advantage and modernize the ways of working, freeing people up to do the things that they are good at. Okay, let's change the gear a little bit. I touched on what I call an immersive experience, so let me. While this is loading, so this is a Power App that is embedded in Microsoft Teams. And by the way, you are seeing a theme here. The most of things are happening within Teams. And I think we all spend a lot of time in Teams and actually then go and take an action in a business application. So one of the things that we are seeing going forward, there is even a question mark that how much of the time that you today spend in the business application, you probably don't have to going forward, because you will be instructing your agents surface through Teams or Outlook or Word or whatever to be able to go and do it for you. So in this example, think of the number of this agent has access to all your unpaid invoices, and it also have access to a subscription of a third party which provides credit scoring. And what this agent has been tasked on to go and say, right, go away and look at all those unpaid invoices with the age depth of a certain days. And once you find, and then go and check the health of that particular customer. Assume you're working in an environment which is a high risk environment to do business in. Now, in this case, this agent has done, so there are two behaviors here in parallel. On the right side, you have a fully autonomous behavior where agent has picked up a particular invoice and then summarized the whole, the call to the finance report, and say, right, okay, this customer is in financial issues and it's in credit risk, like the one here. It says expected to go at administration in next quarter or whatever. And it's just finding that information and taking decisions for you on your behalf. So for example, this one is said, this is too risky to do the business with. It actually then went into finance and operation and took an action to block that account for further sale. Now, I'm sure you would have come across a version of this where you're taking these decisions, but you don't need to. In this case, that decision could be taken by the agent on your behalf. You can then go in and look at the information, how you reached that conclusion, what was the amount unpaid, this, that, another, or you can just leave it there because that action has been taken already. Or you can even actually override that decision. And this is where that dynamic behavior of training the agent comes into play. Now, not everybody is going to go to this level. To start with, as I said earlier, you are likely to get to that full autonomous behavior over a period of time when you have seen an agent consistently providing the results that you as a user would have done. And so on the right side, you have left side, sorry, you have this semi-autonomous behavior. And in this case, this is quite an interesting one because this particular example that he picked up, that invoice, it gone and checked that invoice and the customer and actually thought, well, the score for this particular customer, the credit score or the report for this particular customer is actually pretty good, but it's also in the court as well. To saying this particular customer has got good rating, so they are financially a healthy business to do business with, but at the same time, they are also in the court. But it realized that it could also be down to a specific dispute with a vendor. That might be they are in the court. So there is no reason for me to block them automatically. So it bringing it back to you to decide. I can here simply just approve that to say, yeah, go ahead and block this. Or I say, no, I reject your recommendation of taking this action. You can also look at the details and decide on that. But if I decided to take the recommendation, it will take it from here and will go and do the action and it will move from my to-do list. Now you remember what I said earlier. This is a glorified to-do list helping you to focus where it matters the most. Now, let's look at another example. We looked at two finance examples. I would show you, now we are living through the times where tariffs are changing like exchange rates. So we were presented with this issue to say, look, how could, we are sourcing material from the globe, globally, how could we, build an agent that can help us to find the right vendor, for the right cost and so on. So again, I run this prompt just earlier today. Let me start. There we go. So as you could see, I just run it like 30 minutes ago. It could simply be trying to find the right supplier for a particular amount, or it could also be that, okay, the lending cost, the recent tariffs, which might not be actually all in one data source, that might be multiple data sources, and how you can combine it all together. So in this case, you say, right, okay, which supplier offers the lowest total lending cost for the steel coil? And it's come back and say, this is the one. You can even go and look at where that information come from. Say, great. Then you are also maintaining, the supplier's capacity, or you could also have a direct links to them. In this case, it's a static value, but you could also have a link directly into their system to see what is their capacity to provide, in terms of the material. And it says, right, anybody above 10,000, these are the businesses. From there, they can supply you that that amount of material. You can also then do a comparative analysis to say how expensive it will be, to China to compare to the UK tariff when applied. And you can see, because of the tariffs and this, that, and other things, it is saying, this is what it is. And then you carry on to say, right, okay, now give me all the details, from every supplier, including their tariffs and the landing cost and everything. And you can say it's given that information. So, but it's quite difficult to interpret that information, turn that into a table. And I said, here you go. Now you have all of that information available in front of you, so you can make a decision there and then. Now, these agents can very easily be hooked into Dynamics Finance and Operations or your ERP of choice using the capabilities like MCP that we have now available from Finance and Operations, or even or their respective APIs if you already have a middleware and integration layer. So then actually to instruct the same agents to go and create that purchase order on your behalf. Now you see what I meant when I said that the user experience is evolving and is changing. And I'm very sure that in the near future, we will not be taking business action and completing business processes in the traditional way that we historically once did, which was always logging into FNO to take to complete a task, or logging into your CRM system to do the task. I was at Ignite last week, and one of the biggest announcement that was made there, that every Power Apps, which CRM system is a Power App, the whole system is a Power App, is now an MCP. For those of you who know the MCP means that you can connect it with an agent and you don't need to log into that app anymore. You can say, go create this record, update this record, delete this record. Could you find me a record of this? Turn that data into a chart. I want to see where it sits and this, that, and other. Not only that, you can then say, right, okay, help me to write an email with this customer because of this complaint for this case. And you simply moving through a modern work interface like of Teams, from your ERP systems to your CRM system into your Outlook to draft an email or even create a presentation for getting, to present them with the options and so on. So that experience is completely changing. And if you, I'm sure like ourselves, you are all spending a lot of time in more than one application throughout the day. And how it brings it all together, that's all productivity, that's all reducing time. And things like this, which would have probably taken hours you to go and do this, and now you're able to do in just on a back of a prompt. Now, one thing I do want you to take away is that not all AI experience is driven by a chat scenario, right? These are just an example. The first one that you've seen was no chat was involved. That was a complete autonomous behavior. But we are seeing more and more of this, where we are in this time where the agents are a lot more connected with all the triggers and events that starts a business process, including receiving an email from a customer all the way to an automatic invoice came in and so on. Probably the last one that I will show you, which is something that I'm sure pretty much all of you would have seen this or come across this, is this example here, right? So data manipulation, right? We all have to prepare data to load into your respective CRM system or ERP systems. In this particular case, this agent has been trained very specifically to prepare a journal information that I can import into finance and operations. I given it a bunch of information to say, here is my some transactions that I have. It already have my chart of account to say, right, could you go away and process this? And it comes back to say, okay, this is what it looks like. These are the amounts. This is where they come from. It already picked up my, the cost center and the other things, as per the data has been given. Then it goes and create an account, an offset account and everything, and turn that into a complete journal, even picked out the type of journal that I need to use. And say, great, turn that into a CSV for me so I can import. Now I can just simply go and download that CSV, which is using my data, master data from my finance systems, taken the raw data, which could have been in any format, and turn that into that structured data that I can just simply import back into the finance system. I got a lot of these examples. I can spend a lot of time going through it, but hopefully that has given you a bit of an idea. Now, just going back to the presentations to conclude, what we've been talking about so far. Now, the one question that I get asked all the time is to say, right, okay, great. These are all the great capabilities, and especially with the Gen AI in the recent days, has brought a lot of opportunities for for innovation. But how do we start? Where do we start? I think it's probably fair to say this is the first time, at least in my professional career, where we have a piece of tech and everybody's trying to work out what to do with it. What business process and the issue this resolves. So I have a very simple view on it, and I'm pretty sure you can all relate to this as well. The first thing that you got to do as a business to look at, so what is the problem that we are trying to resolve, or what as a business is the biggest issue for us where we are going to use this capability. Whether it's a user experience, whether it's as we're going through some of those examples today, could also be a vendor or a customer experience, like you see in the first example, where that would have been an email in somebody's inbox and could have been dealt with after 5 days, now get responded to instantly. Or whether it's around improving the quality of the information that you capture and you gather, and as you've seen with one of the demos that I shown, that how it can help you to structure the data and prepare it, enrich it for to be stored and processed. or whether it's of one or more than one. It's never one of these areas. In my experience, is normally a couple of them that you will couple together to be able to find that use case that you want to develop. And then also, I think the last one probably is by far the most important one, and that's one that I started, with that retrieval agent, as you see, is that giving you the data of, in that context available to you on your fingertips to be able to make the right decisions. Right. One of the biggest issue, I always say, we are all data rich, poor organizations. We're collecting millions and millions of records, over the weeks and months and so on. But the availability of that data in the way that you need to make that decision, it's a question mark. It's a struggle for every organization. And this is probably one of the biggest area where AI can help. Now, other tip that I will give you is that when you're looking for those opportunities, don't look for an end-to-end process. Look for a task within a process. So as procure to pay, order to cash, whatever, and then you will probably map it out and you will say, right, okay, there are 15 steps happen between this process, which is the one thing that I can take, one task that I can take, which will be an ideal candidate to convert that into an agentic process. Now, there is an issue when it comes to doing this. The people who understand the business, they don't know the tech, and the people who know the tech, they don't know the business. So I have a very simple view on it. These are the cards, and we'll be happy to share with you. If you are interested, please get in touch with Debbie. And this is just Microsoft is one of the suppliers of these type of capability cards, but they are available from other vendors as well. Which gets you thinking, okay, what can AI do? What is the use case? Give me an example. And so you will end up with a whole stack of them. I think there are like 70 odd of them, that have different capabilities. And then what you would do is that you will outline your process. You will then look for those opportunities, and you will then take the capability of AI and you put them together. And now you have took a very simple process in this case, which is a real example from one of our clients, sales quotation on the back of an email. Because it's a very complex scenario. It is not just simple, just as it looks on the screen, but how you then use a different capability of AI, extracting information, looking at the data, and doing the data mapping and this, that, and other, and then create a version, an agentic version of that process. The beauty of this is that once you've gone through this process, we can work with you to help you to understand the cost of implementing it. But this will also give you the ability to actually work out the ROI for that particular use case, as you guys understand your businesses and the effort it takes to process that today. And that's all I have to say. So back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Tasif. Really good overview there. I think it's one of those things that at the minute it's quite overwhelming. But hopefully you can see from that you've already, as a business, got the rules, you've got the processes, you've got your data in Dynamics 365 and beyond. And AI and the agents can be kind of the glue that connects all that together, takes actions for you, suggests actions, keeping your people in control, but kind of removing the work that's non-value adding. And HSO can help you get there, along with the Microsoft tooling, Tasif and some of his team. So next Lunch and Learn is very relevant to this. How do we go from all of these ideas and these concepts to, of course, data is absolutely critical. So the next Lunch and Learn, which is very soon, normally they're monthly, but this we wanted to keep the pace up on this, is on December the 11th, and it is on how to get your data ready. Preparing it, making sure it's safe, looking at security, the categorization, all of that. So I hope you'll come along for that one. If you just pop onto the next slide, Tasif, and yeah, if you guys have got your cameras ready, if you follow this QR code, we will help you do an AI readiness consultation. How to start, what's the first step you should take, some of that envisaging that Tasif mentioned, and looking at your data and your environment, your opportunities, that kind of thing, with some of our experts. So just remains to thank everyone for coming, and thank Tasif for presenting. And if you stay around after this, there'll be an opportunity for Q&A, but for now we're going to close the recording. And yes, thanks for coming everyone, and see you next time.